You're listening to the Bon Ray Show. It's 8 in the evening. Tune in every night at 8 to listen to the Bon Ray Show on Irish News Radio or ITV.ie. And you can contact anything that you've heard or if anything you'd like to discuss at news@irishnews.net.
Today we're talking to a lady called Tracy who is going to tell us her story, a tragic story about her son being killed and covered up by the English police. Quite a shocking, disturbing story. So welcome to the show, Tracy. So you're going to tell us your story and let us know what's happening in the UK, because obviously none of this has been covered by our media, but I believe it's not even covered by your media.
No, it's not. We had many interviews with the media, and all they ever did was cut it down to about 10 seconds to not show what we was actually saying to them. I'll try and compress it as much as I can because it's gone on for 11 months now, and there's been a lot in this 11 months.
To the very beginning of what it's all about, and tell us how it happened, because the Irish wouldn't have heard anything about this, so it's quite a shock for them.
Yeah, of course. On the 26th of January this year, my son was with his friends on the way to a 16th birthday party. They was walking down Shepperdston Lane, which is the name of the lane they was walking down, and a car mounted the pavement. Now, on this long pavement, it's quite a long stretch of pavement, there was 5 children walking on this pavement. It mounted the pavement straight, in a straight line. It knocked 2 children, first of all, to the side of the car as it mounted, knocked the first 2 children to the side. It then went on to hit my son's friend George. It then murdered him. It then went on to hit my son, who got knocked up in the air and landed in a cemetery. His name is Josh. And it then went on to hit Harry. Now, Harry was the 5th child to be hit, but the 3rd child to be murdered. And Harry landed on the bonnet, which blocked the driver's view, which made him hit the lamppost at the end of this long pavement. Now, he never broke, he never swerved to come off the pavement, he never turned the wheel or anything like that. Within the first few days, we was given 1 liaison officer between 3 families. So there was 3 families involved here, and our children were best friends, so we knew each other. So because they gave us 1 family liaison officer between 3 families, and we all spoke to each other, we started to notice that things wasn't correct in what she was saying, because she'd tell one family one thing, another family, another thing, or a different version, and so on. And us families always stuck together and we always spoke. So quite early on, we knew things wasn't adding up, because they was trying to say it was just an accident, just a dangerous driver, and that's what this was. When in fact, throughout the whole investigation, there was nothing that ever pointed to this being an accident.
So it was an Islamic attack, and they just kind of wanted to cover it up because there's been too many Islamic attacks, so they've just decided to cover this one up.
It's not just our one. We've done a lot of research stints, and we do believe these were 2 extremists that done this. That's what we would believe at the moment, because we haven't been shown or found anything other than that fact. But since researching, we have realised that it's not just us. It's not just us that this has happened to. We've done our own research, and we found out since at least 2010 in this country, cars, vans and buses have been mounting pavements, and mowing into people. It's not just us. We thought it was, back in January, or early February, I should say, that we actually was thinking we was in the 3rd biggest corrupt thing going in the UK, until we researched, until we come out on the streets and heard other people's stories. It's not just us. It's not just us.
Jeepers, that's quite shocking. Unbelievable. Like, my son is 16. I cannot imagine the pain, and I really admire you. I don't think I'd be as strong as you are. I'd be able to speak about it. You're very rational. You're fantastic, amazing. I admire you so much to even be able to speak like this and to help other people. It's quite shocking what's going on. particularly in the UK, but all over Europe.
They put me in this system, and it was the worst. They say the red pill that you could ever face. To lose your child is the worst thing ever, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. It really is the most awfulest of pain. On top of that, we realised the Met Police was covering all of this up, and then we had to work out why they would do that. Why would you cover this up? So then we done a long road to researching, and then we got to the CPS. The CPS then were covering it up. We were sitting there explaining to them why we believe this was a deliberate attack. At that meeting, the collision report was read in front of 15 people, in front of the police and the CPS, where it stated the driver had control of the car the whole time. He never ever lost control. And I said to them, I rest my case. And they don't speak back to you. They literally sit there just staring and don't answer no question. It's really, really bizarre. From there, we went to the Central Criminal Court, which was the Old Bailey. At the Old Bailey, they are standing there saying the opposite to the evidence. They never showed the CCTV and they never showed the collision report. And they were two important pivotal points of that case, and they never showed them. And you're standing there and it's all so surreal, that this is going on. So not only have we had to wake up in the most horrendous way to what we're actually living in, from the murders of our children and the covering up, to realise the country we thought we lived in, we don't live in.
Absolutely. I've known people to wake up, but God love you. That's just, I can't imagine. For me, I woke up through Islamic kind of terrorism and stuff like that. I've known people who've woken up through the extreme porn. I've known people who've woken up through something to do with the chemicals or the water being poisoned. There's been so many different, or to the abortion referendum or to the eviction, but everybody has, like I was talking to somebody earlier on, like something that usually connects, and then they kind of start connecting, and then they see the bigger picture. They go, okay, this is a whole bigger picture behind all this, and it's quite frightening. But for you, that's quite a shock. So you had no idea up to obviously your son.
The thing is, if you're a victim, it's almost like you're blamed for being a victim. There's no support for you if you're a victim in whatever reason you're a victim. In our own case with our children, we was recently at the appeal courts where they reduced the driver's sentence, even though he's not on the correct charge. He should be on a charge of 3 times murder, 2 attempted murders, because that's what it was. It was a deliberate attack. Now, in the appeal court, they had the audacity to take in account, this is their words, of the impact it has had on him and his family. Not the impact on us, not the impact on our children that we've lost, not the impact on their siblings. It was utterly, utterly disgraceful and shameful. And on top of that, what you have now in the UK, because when I was at another court event, I happened to pick up a leaflet, and this might work for some people, but this is my opinion on it. What they've got is restorative justice. So what that is, someone can commit a crime, and what they want you to do is go and meet the person who has committed the crime, no matter what the atrocity is, and to try, and in the end, all it's about is to try and make them feel less guilty. That wouldn't work for me. I would never be interested in meeting the murderer that did that to our children. No. I believe in God and everything else, but I will never forgive. I will never forgive what that man did. These were 3 wonderful children. He had a passenger in the car, and I also believe he was just as complicit. He might have not been driving, but he was just as complicit, who has got off scot-free, who assisted the driver out of the car, who ran from the scene, which is leaving the scene of a crime. He didn't report the accident that you never know might have helped save at least one of the children. And he has never been charged with any crime whatsoever. All we get is that he did nothing wrong. Yet he went to the police station, he ran away, he went to the police station with a prepared statement, and stating in that statement that he didn't see anyone get hit. Didn't see anyone get hit. There's been no remorse, no comment statements, nothing. There is nothing, and I'll repeat it again, in our children's case to ever show evidence-wise, that this was ever an accident. Everything points to a deliberate attack, and they don't want the public to know.
Would you consider yourself kind of a liberal kind of character?
No, I was never into any of that politics or anything. I mean, some words, to be honest, when we first come out, I had to go home and Google what they meant, because I'm just a person who just knew what was right and what was wrong. And that's what I'd stand by. You know, I worked very hard, you know, take my kids to school, come back. I wasn't one for TV anyway, because I also worked from home. You know, my life was taken up by my work and my children. So although I knew, you know, certain things were changing, you know, that I didn't feel happy about, I never saw anything bigger than that, really. And I don't think a lot of people do. I never saw people coming out onto the streets, having these demonstrations. Like in the UK alone, there's been a demonstration for 20 years, happening every year. And, you know, but you're not going to know about these demonstrations unless you're out on the streets, because the mainstream media report them as something else. And I'll give you an example of one that I went to up in Sunderland. I went to a demonstration up in Sunderland, and the women and children up there had a banner which was right at the front. It was a really big banner, and it was red and white. And on the banner, it said justice for women and children, because a lot of women and children are being abused up in Sunderland, and the establishment are doing nothing about it. So they're out on the streets, children holding placards. I was up there, I see this with my own eyes. 2 days later, on LBC and in the mainstream media, they was reporting it as that banner saying, refugees not welcome. Now, if that isn't an eye-opener, I don't know what is. You know, as well as my own story, as well as being out doing our own demonstrations, as well as going to other demonstrations and seeing what the mainstream media report was the next day. It's horrific, because they're not telling the people the truth. They're assisting in the demise of the people. Nothing is transparent, trust me. When I was in court the other day, we was in court 4, they moved behind our backs to court 5 and did the appeal in there without us in there. In fact, we ended up finding out, we came out of court 4, we went into court 5, the police come in there because they were called earlier, saw what was going on, they were shocked themselves, and they took their hats off and stood with us. It was quite a shocking moment. It's just a shame it wasn't televised, you know. And that's what happened yesterday. And in the appeal courts, we was informing them all week by email that they had an edited document, which they already actually knew from the 4th. So they had a document that had been edited. So that's fraud. It's corrupt and it's perjury. We had the QC on the 4th proved to be a liar. His defence owned up to a lie she'd done at the Old Bailey, and then she'd done another 2 further lies in this court that the judge caught her out on. She hasn't been debarred. Nothing has happened to her. She can continue to work. You're not meant to lie under oath. Yes, you're a defence, and you do your job in a defensive way, but you don't damn right lie. And this is what his QC was doing, and it came out in court. The judge only had half a map. So of the scene, which made it look like the car come down in a straight line and all of a sudden just clipped this curb and mounted it and killed our boys. The same narrative that the mainstream media went with. It is untrue. It's half a map. It happened further down to our children, you know, and the judge knew that because we informed him of that, and they still continued to reduce the sentence and didn't give a damn to any of our feelings. Not one damn.
Incredible. So I think it's like an insult on top of injury. It's almost as painful. Like, it's just disgraceful that they would add this burden on top of you burying your child, and they just add this. It's absolutely. But like, your government has just signed this UN pact, as in our government has as well, has been very much under the table. Nobody has really talked about it. Although, you know, the British have voted for Brexit to leave, the UN pact is the reasons why the British voted to leave was because of immigration. And then they signed this UN pact, which will have everybody coming in for any reason And if you discuss it in a negative way, you will be criminalised. Your government and my government and a lot of the governments under the EU have signed this without even talking to people or giving them a vote on this.
Well, they don't seem to respect democracy anyway, do they? If you look at Brexit alone, we voted to leave. David Cameron, a couple of years ago when he did his speech, said there will be no second vote. And if you vote to leave and leave wins, then leave it will be. And then we've got all this scaremongering in the mainstream media over here that has created Remainers to come out on the streets because of the scaremongering they do. So, which reflects on what you've just stated. They don't care what we say, what we voted for. If they have another agenda, then that's what they will push it to, and that is what they are doing here on the UK. We have many issues in the UK, and the mainstream media are complicit in all of this because they're not showing the truth. And that's the issue we have as people. Without the truth out there, then the people do not know what is going on in their own country. And if everybody knew the truth, I'm sure the whole country would rise up.
Unfortunately, it's the same in this country, and I think even probably more so, even though I know you probably find that harder to believe, but because we have no media at all, and our government has now come out with, there was a terrible eviction with an older couple and a brother, and they were literally forced out of their house. But basically the government has come out to say that he will use that as hate speech because an independent media went out and told the story about these old people being forced out of their home. And they used Northern Irish, back into our politic kind of stuff, but they used Northern Irish people to come down to do it. So, but it was deliberate. The government is trying to set the whole situation with Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland off, and to try and get that whole sectarian fighting and killing each other off again, when it was really the government and Michael D. Higgins, our president, who signed off that eviction bill. But luckily enough, I've been reading a lot of the Northern Irish Protestant posts, and they've copped onto it as well. They're saying they're actually using us to actually try and start killing each other off. The media is absolutely shocking, the fact that they tried to use this and they were like, it's same again, the English coming down to try and, it's just like black and tans and everything like that, really trying to push that whole anti-British feeling to try and rile up people to start that whole thing off again. It's just absolutely disgraceful, rather than telling the truth. And that's the media is so disgusting in this country. It's a disgrace.
Absolutely. The media should be forced to tell the truth, and they don't. And that's one of the biggest issues we have in the country, in Britain. The biggest thing is, I think now, people are waking up to the real facts of what is going on. I think there's a really big awakening. That seems to be what's happening over here. The government, the establishment, along with the mainstream media, have been all complicit in creating this massive divide between the people. Old against young, Protestants against Catholics, straight against gays, black against white, workers against unemployed, feminists against men, all of it. They've created the massive divide because it is divide and conquer. For them to conquer and go through with their agenda, they have to create these divides, and while everyone is arguing amongst themselves, they are doing what they're doing in the establishment.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think for us, it really woke up. There was a big, huge abortion referendum in this country, and people were completely lied to about what it was and the whole agenda. But it was a complete divide in the country. And it's since then people have started to wake up. And now the evictions have started. But they're using, as I said, the Northern Irish to try and get that big divide again, and people out kind of fighting exactly for what you're saying. They're breaking down this country. They're completely getting rid of everything to do our culture, our heritage, our independence. A country will be left only in name only. There will be no Irish indigenous population left. because they're destroying it.
It's shocking to hear, but yet again, see, I will blame the mainstream media, hearing what's going on over there in, Northern Ireland. We don't hear it over here, because we don't hear anything about that, but we're not going to because they're hiding it from all the countries. We was in Poland quite recently, and what was nice being in Poland, the people were wanting to hear what you had to say. Where here we've been so downtrodden, we're used as cannon fodder. The establishment really don't care what happens between the people. They're quite happy to create that animosity, that hostility between the Catholics and the Protestants again, and make it look like, that you're doing something wrong against them when it's not the truth. It's the establishment that is the snake's head that is causing all of this. I was put in this system.
It's quite shocking. It's like being woken up in a twilight zone. Sometimes I don't know whether I'm imagining some of this or I'm living in a mad, because a lot of people around me, probably like similar to yourself, well, probably a lot of people around you have probably woken up because of your story. But a lot of people around me are still in the cuckoo land and think everything on the media is true and, everything that they're hearing is real. So sometimes I do feel like, I'm living in a land of cuckoo. The only time I can kind of express myself is on Facebook going, did you hear that? Oh my God, does everybody see what's going on? And other than that, like, I've talked to my family and they think I'm pure crazy. They're like, that's not happening. Are you going crazy? Like, seriously, they don't see it at all. And that's quite scary, to be kind of isolated like that. They're like, no, because they believe everything on the media, because they've never known anything. And I don't know, like, whether it's just gone really far, or was it always like this? And there was, people were just generally asleep, or I don't know when it started.
I think it's been going for a long time. I think it's been going, if you look at Albert Pike, right back to 1871. So we've been lied to for a very long time, even with the laws over in here, as I say, where I've woken up and I've researched and I do my own research, if someone tells me something, I will research it myself. And you're right, it is like the Twilight Zone. Sometimes I sit here and I just think, no, they've played a very clever game in hiding all of this, a very clever game. It's shocking. And, the laws, the real law of the land is the common law. And what they've been doing, they've been using acts and statutes on us, which is maritime law. Now, maritime law, you can't use on land. You have to be at least over 3 miles out in the seas. They've actually switched it. Now, I'll give you an example. We was in the appeal court on the 4th, and we held that court. Now, if that court had been televised, that would have been history. We held that court for 2.5 hours, which, you're just not allowed to do in court because you're in court and the judge or the prosecutors and the defence, they're the only ones who are allowed to speak. You're not really anything there. They even told me themselves that this wasn't a crime towards our children and us, it was a crime towards the state. I informed them, and that's when I started looking into the law, because I couldn't understand that. As soon as you sign that birth certificate, the state own you, because they don't tell you this. That is a contract. And we signed our children under the common law court to reclaim their birthright, and I signed the Barron's Law back in April 2018, and I used this when I was in court. Now, in the court, think about what I've just said about them using maritime law and how long they have lied to us for. You can't use that 3 miles in, and you can't use it on land. Now, if you look at a courtroom, and I said this to the judge on the 4th, they've made it look like a ship. You've got the dock. You've got the dock that people stand in. Down here is the deck, and up there is where the captain sits. I know how that sounds, but that's exactly what it is if you look at the law.
It makes perfect sense that you say it. Yeah, go on. Yeah, I've never thought about it, but now that you say it, makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can find more out if you look at it. I've got Black's Dictionary. Like I said, I researched myself. I started getting the law dictionary books. They stopped teaching the solicitors in this country back in the 1970s on common law, so that when you approach a solicitor and you ask them about the common law, they have no clue what you're talking about. And the same with the police. They have no clue. You can say we use common law and the police all the time if they're trying to approach us, if we're trying to raise funds or we're out on the streets because they don't want people hearing what you've got to say, because they don't want people hearing the truth. And we just quote the common law, and when they leave us alone because they know we know what they were talking about. They hide so much from the public, and I think it's absolutely disgusting that we have secret societies when we're meant to be free and in an open society. There should be no secrets. We have a government within a government. We have two mayors, and it's not on that they treat people the way they treat us.
Yeah, but unfortunately, it's not just your country, it's all over the world. I was going to even say Europe, but it's not even. You think of South Africa, all the whites being killed, and that again is it's just depopulating the world. Just a note as well, that there's supposed to be the federal banks reserves are supposed to crash around Christmas time. Now, I just got a note from it today to say that if you have money in your banks, take it out and stock up on food, apparently. Now, it sounds like, again, I feel like I'm living in the twilight zone. I don't half sometimes believe that some of the things. I'm like, surely this can't be true. But you know what? It's better off. The world has gone crazy. So I think go on course and take your money out of your banks and stock up on food. Look, it's Christmas time, so I think most people will be stocking up on food. But yeah, I got it from a good resort. He watches the stocks and shares all the time, and he says the banks are about to crash in America. The federal bank will crash all the worldwide banks down everywhere. And I think it's partly to do with all this. This is the globalization. They want one government, one religion. They want to collapse all the banks, so we are literally enslaved to them. And that's what they're doing.
Well, that's exactly it. We are in a prison. We're in a prison without bars. They do enslave us. That's what we are. We're just a pound note sign for them. We're just bonds to them. And I know, you may have many listeners listening to this at some point and thinking, what the hell are they talking about? But you're spot on. And what they do, it's called problem, reaction, solution. So what the establishment will do, they will find, right, where there's a problem, right, we need to do something to get a reaction, and then we can get our solution. Not for the people, for their agenda. And this is what they do. Now, quite recently, we have had, last week, O2 go down. And then we had Gatwick, where they said there was all these drones. And then we had the same day, Heathrow IT go down. So, but what that is it's like subliminal messages to the people. I'm trained in NLP, so I see a lot of NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming, on what they do to the people over here. It's in adverts, it's on the TV. If you go up and down escalators in train stations, it's there, and it's what they're training our police on as well. So it's all about thought suggestion. So they subliminally are preparing us for something that's coming. And maybe it's just what you've just said. So it'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, no, definitely. I got a lot. He watches the stocks and shares. So I don't know, maybe it's not as dramatic as he's saying it to be, but I think it's probably better off to take your money out of the banks anyway, because maybe you don't need to stock up on food as much as, but that's what he was saying. Like, he watches the stocks and shares, and he's big into all that sort of stuff. But he said, the American federal banks are going to collapse around Christmas time, and he said, that it'll bring all the world banks down, because it's not because that happened to Ireland before. I don't know whether you remember back, the Irish bank crashed, and what the Irish people had to do was to do with the EU. It's a long story, but anyway, we had to bail the banks in Ireland out, which what we should have done was like Iceland and let them all crash. But we ended up bailing them out, and it was literally because we just joined the EU and our banks were connected to the European bank. So 0.1 population of Europe had to pay 48% of the euro banking crisis. It was absolutely insane, and our government signed it off. So we're all slave to the system. Around that time, we voted no to join the EU twice, and we were made to vote again. Once was called Lisbon, and the other one was called Nice. But both times we said no, we didn't want to join the EU. And they made us pretty much like what they're doing with your Brexit, all the scare tactics, everything. But it's just insane. If you look at it, quite a few countries that said no to joining the EU, but they were all forced to re-vote again and change their minds.
See, I didn't even know that. I didn't know that happened to you either. So, yet again, the mainstream media, which they actually sicken me to my stomach because we know what's going on, and don't get me wrong, there will be disinformation out there as well because they have to do that to try and, it's called astroturf in America actually, where you watch and look up so much stuff that in the end you don't know what's true and not true, so you end up discrediting the truth. So they will stick a lot of disinformation out there, and that's why me particularly, and I'm sure you do it yourself, if you look up something, I look up it many times, not just the ones on YouTube. I look up whistleblowers and things like that. Now, I didn't know that you had to do a second referendum and that you was forced to join after saying leave. And this is showing where there is no democracy because they're not
Absolutely
respecting
not.
the people. And the people are the ones that have the power. And that's why now in the UK, you've just started to see the yellow vests come out. And I know that's happened in Dublin as well.
Yeah.
And the yellow vest is a chance for, I'm a leaver as well. And, I've spoken to Remainers out on the street because we have a common ground, and the common ground is the establishment. We're anti-establishment and we're anti-EU. The Remainers are anti-establishment. So how about we find our common ground, we come together and say, we've had enough. They are destroying people. They're allowing the murders of our children, not just our children, others. We've had stabbings and shootings, many since January this year. The establishment are not doing anything. There's no investigation into these. Hardly anyone's being arrested. And let the people as a whole come together because that's what it's about. It's about the people, and it's about time people cared, and got their empathy and compassion back and cared what happened to someone else. Don't wait until it happens to you because it now is a case of not if, it's when.
Yeah, exactly. That was a very good point. And that was the one good thing about when this eviction happened. It was like last weekend, and that they tried to use the Northern Irish, which was a disgusting kind of low blow because of our history. They tried to use the Northern Irish. I mean, they hired them, and obviously they were thugs, and they came down. But they tried to use that hole that we would go up, and now they did get attacked back. But they wanted the Northern Irish to attack the Southern, and we to attack and start killing each other. Such a low blow, so they could get away with taking that person's house, and the blame would go on Northern Ireland rather than the banks and the government. It was a disgusting low blow, but majority of Ireland and Northern Ireland, all of us, I don't think anybody has actually kind of turned around and said, that's it, we're going to go and attack Northern Ireland, or Northern Ireland's like, we're not going to, retaliate. And so I think both of us, for the first time, actually stood together and said, you know what, we can see through what you're doing, which is really, really good, and that's been a change. But yeah, the niece, we were asked in 2002 at the very beginning, did you want to join the EU? It was called the Nice Treaty. A few countries had asked, and before that there was another treaty, Maastricht Treaty. We weren't asked for that one, but a few countries were asked for that, and a lot of countries said no, and they were all made to redo it. Our first one we were asked was called the Nice Treaty, and we said no. So they said, oh, you didn't really understand it, Ireland, you'll have to redo it again, and, it's great for you, and how dare you say no, because they've done so much for you since you've been in the EC. So then they made us vote again, and they said it was too close to call, so we would leave it for a few years. So then in 2009, they asked us again, and they renamed it, but it was the same question again. And it was called the Nice, and we said no again. So literally everything you've had thrown at you about Brexit we had, you're going to be worse than the famine, you're going to be on your own, you're la la la, nobody's going to trade you, you're too small, you won't be able to stand on your own, this is ridiculous, la 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 la, everything. And our government basically pleaded. So actually, Nigel Farage, he stood up because our government at the time was crashing, there was a guy who had an alcoholic problem who was stepped in. Anyway, long story. But Nigel Farage, because our government wasn't strong enough to stand up to the EU, and Nigel Farage, in fairness to him, stood up and said, you cannot keep asking the Irish to keep voting for it. They've been asked 3 times. And in the end, we got something called a Dublin Agreement, which you'll often see, down with Dublin Agreement, because in that it was like, if there was a crisis, as there has been, a refugee crisis, that they couldn't fly all the way to Ireland, that they must stay where they have safety. They can't just travel all the way to Ireland, to the nearest country. And the other thing was, like, that Europe couldn't become Islamic, Ireland couldn't become Islamic, and Turkey couldn't become part of the EU, and it wouldn't be, the majority wouldn't rule, because at one point they wanted them, which they totally ignored everything we've said. The majority couldn't rule because we have such a tiny population, would mean that our voice wouldn't be heard. So, and that we needed our voice to be heard so that it would be country rather than population, because if Turkey joins, there's like 70 million or something, and there's 4 million in Ireland. So that means that overnight Europe would become an Islamic state and Ireland would become an Islamic country if it was majority rule. So they said, oh no, Ireland, that'd be ridiculous. Every single thing they have ignored. And our government has wrote back, because our constitution was written so tightly, because we'd fought with you guys for 800 years. Our constitution was so tight that we could never be under another union, that it wasn't ours to give away, that this country was to be passed on. Like, it was written, and they've been chipping away at our constitution, so it's actually so watered down, it doesn't stand for anything anymore.
It's actually treason signing up to the EU in the first place.
Yeah, in our country too, it was like that you can never, if the Irish people were never allowed to be asked, and if they were to be asked to join into any union, it would be null and void, and that's in our constitution. But it's been just so chipped away that they keep chipping at it. We keep being asked for different referendums to chip away. Like, even the right to life of the unborn, that was another part of it. It chip away. They made up this bullshit about the blasphemy law. Like, nobody has ever been charged for blasphemy for 200 years. We had a famous program called Father Ted, who took the piss out of religion. But they wanted to bring it in just to knock down and take down all our constitution, so we have absolutely no rights. It was also a right to Ireland that you could take away anything from an Irish person, but you couldn't take away the family home. And that has been signed off last year. The eviction bill was signed off. It's just been insane. The whole thing is just crazy.
And this is why I think, like, France has gone up and everything else, because everyone is fed up. France, Canada, Sweden, all the people in those countries are standing up, and the same as it started here last week, and as I just said a little while ago, in Dublin, because what they actually want, by ignoring us all and ignoring the will of the people, they want a dictatorship. We're already in a 2-tier policing system. They want to take your freedom of choice away, the freedom of speech, just to conform. They would love it if we was all wearing the same shirts and never questioned or spoke to anyone, and just walked up the road and didn't have any of our own opinions, which is completely wrong. That's not freedom of choice and freedom of independence and everything else. And it's disgraceful what was going on. If you go back centuries, the establishment were put there to just govern us, not to rule us. And what they are actually doing is ruling us and ignoring us. And it's all for them, their agenda, for money and power. And we mean absolutely nothing to them.
No, they're going to try and depopulate us. I really do believe that.
Oh, absolutely. They're already doing it. We've had a silent war in the UK for at least 5 years now on the streets, and they're not telling the people. There's a lot of people that are aware of it and are awake to that, but they're not telling us because they literally don't care. And what I said in a speech last week, they treat us as if we are just a number. So let that number be their downfall. Let's stand up in thousands, tens of thousands, and say enough is enough, because the establishment, compared to the people as a whole, are small. There's millions
True.
of us, millions. And what we need a people. There is no party in our establishment right now that cares about the people, that are for the people. And what we need is hope. There's most of the country in pain and suffering right now. A lot of them are grieving like me, but they're in pain and suffering. I've been on the streets, I see it, I know. I've spoken to hundreds and hundreds of people, and I feel their pain as well as my own. And it's got to stop. They can't keep treating us like that. And we, the people, need to stand up. I'm involved in the yellow coat. I put mine on. Enough is enough. I'm out on the streets with other people. And it's great to see that slowly this will build, because people are at tipping point now.
Yeah. No, and I do believe people are standing together. And I even think in some ways it's actually bringing people together. Like as you were saying, the Remainers and the Brexit people. And for us, it's like even the South and the North. It's kind of, in some ways, they're trying to push us apart, but it's actually it's going to be our strength, hopefully. And there will be a war. There is, like, I think once that UN pact was signed, and it was treason for all countries who signed it, that they would that they were bringing in populations from all over the world, for any reason, and that is destruction of every country, like destroying everything about the indigenous population. So it was treason. So I do think that will bring a war, and that's exactly what they want to do. They want to bring these people from third world countries who are here, who have terrible views of women, terrible views, and have no morals of life or no value on life. And that is reality. That's who they are. And it's just they have a different view of what is right and wrong. And
Uh,
it's a danger.
oh, it's a massive danger. It's a huge danger, and it's upsetting to feel our views, we're decent people, and anyone who speaks up, or anyone who's a nationalist or anything like that, they get portrayed with words that would have had more foundation back in the 1960s and 1970s, words that have no credibility now. But they use those words against you to portray you as something else. Now, I've been out fighting for Josh, Harry and George, as well as the other parents, since February. I actually went to, my first speaking out in public was at Speaker's Corner on the 18th of March. Now, once I started coming out and speaking out, I had the police on my case. I was called an Islamophobic. I was called a racist. Now, I've never said anything racist in my life, or anything like that, but they're portraying me as that, and all I am is a mother fighting for what's right, not for just justice for Josh, Harry and George, but justice for every other child in our country, because if we don't stand up as a nation, we're the only generation that can do it. There will be not a
No
lot
other.
left for our children and their children if we don't do it. And I think this is the chance for everyone to come together, forget the differences, forget them, because there is a bigger thing we have to fight here.
Absolutely,
It's,
because I think the next generation, unfortunately, have been brainwashed. Yeah, completely. Since Lisbon, which I told you about, that was about 20 years ago, the whole education system in Ireland has been completely changed. Like I see my children's books, it has to be EU regulated. So that's pretty much propaganda bullshit. There's propaganda on the TVs, propaganda on the music, propaganda on their games. They're being EU indoctrinated. So much so, my son actually told me one time he was a white European. I was like, what? You're not European, you're Irish. And if you have a colour, you're green. You don't have, like, white has nothing to do with Ireland. Like, it's not, although your skin is white and there's nothing wrong with that, but that's not who you are. You're green and you're Irish. But it just shows you how, in such a short time, they're able to get into their heads. and confuse them and wipe out their identity and their culture and everything, their heritage. They've been chipping away at it so much so they will have an identity crisis, that generation.
Absolutely, and anyone should be proud, no matter what colour you are, no matter where you come from, of who you are, and that should never change. There was a time when I went to Speaker's Corner, and we'd printed our three boys' faces on the Union Jack, and we had justice for our boys. And as soon as I walked onto Speaker's Corner, I had the Parks police approach me and say to me that my flag was offensive. And can't I see that? Yeah, and can't I see that my flag is offensive? And I said, no, I can't see my flag is offensive. I'm in the Royal Park. I'm sure the Queen don't mind me holding a British flag. How is that offensive? I wouldn't be offended by anyone holding their flag and raising it, because they are quite rightly within
In your own country, so why shouldn't you raise your flag in your own country?
Absolutely, and I refuse to take it down. I will not take it down. I've got a pole outside my house with it flying at the top, and one for our soldiers that died in the war underneath that. And I feel personally that anyone who tells me in the establishment to take the flag down, I find as treason myself, because I think it's morally wrong and it's totally wrong. And stop doing this to the people, no matter who they are. Look what they tried to do over here with the Windrush. The Windrush, they tried to pick on them, they tried to deport them, and it's morally wrong. The Windrush has been in this country since, the 1950s. They've worked hard, they've had children here, they're British citizens, and how dare they pick on them? But they thought they could do that and get away with it, but too many people stood up and said, you're not, and now everyone needs to stand up for the children. It's about the children now that we need to protect.
Yeah. Absolutely, God love them, because they're going into this completely indoctrinated propaganda where they've been taught all angles. They don't have a choice. There's a lot of people now choosing homeschooling in Ireland. It's gone up 3 times as much because of the schools. They have it. They're calling it school phobia, but because of this, they're completely teaching them bullshit. They're thinking of dropping history. They don't want children to learn history because they say it might make them prejudiced. Against what? We didn't attack anybody. It's like not saying that all other countries should have a reason to have white guilt, but we don't have a reason to be white guilt. It's insane, and I cannot believe they're telling you to take down your flag in your own country. Whatever about someone else's country, but your own country, nobody should be telling you to do that.
Absolutely. And like you're saying about the indoctrination in schools, now in Sweden, they're at the point where they're not allowed to call a boy and a girl. They've got to call them kids. And they're saying you've got this non-gender clothing now, and they're saying, that Celine Dion has just made non-gender clothing. And not to call them, that'll end up coming over here. You can't call them, say whether they're a boy or a girl, let them decide.
Yeah, no, I've heard that. They've got rid of the word woman as well. You're not allowed to say woman, you have to say womex. They're changing that as well. And in Ireland, we have certain words, like you do as well in England, where we would say pet to a child or love to a girl. Most males would say to girls, but love. All right, sit down there, love. Where now that's all been banned. A lot of the Irish words, which is not derogatory or sexist, what they're saying it is. It's just the way the Irish speak. But all that's been having to be dropped. It's like saying, oh no, you're not allowed to say that anymore. It's just stupid stuff.
It's political correctness gone mad. Political correctness was made up so they can do just what they like.
It's crazy. I remember when I actually lived in the UK for a while, and I used to live in Bristol, and they used to call everybody lover. All right, lover, and everything like that is going to be banned now. You can't talk to people like that. It's like everybody knew that they weren't meaning lover, that I was his lover. And people know that in Ireland, when they say love, it's in a term of affection. It's not that they love you or anything like that. It's just, it's terrible for the children. this country that all the countries that they're getting rid of and making everything gender fluid. It's insane. And you have a choice now whether to put down girl or boy or neutral or something stupid like this on birth certs. It's just gone beyond a joke at this stage, the whole lot of it.
I don't think it's the people either that are putting forward or writing to the MPs and saying, oh, I don't like this word, I don't like that. It's all the establishment, because what it's all about control. And that's what they want to do, control us. And they know that they can't control certain parts of the population. And that's what it's all about. They can't control us. They couldn't control a person like me, so they don't like a person like me.
No.
You know, so they will try and make me look like something else that I am not. You know, and same with a lot of people in this country. You know, I was at another demo quite recently, well, it was a couple of months ago, and it was hosted by the DFLA, and this demonstration was all about the injustices of what was going on in the country. You know, they kindly asked if I could speak, and you know, other people were speaking on what was going on, just telling our story, being allowed to speak out. And the police, the march started at one end in London, but I was at the end where the march was finishing, and I was only there because I'd done a 4-night sleep out opposite the 10 Downing Street. I call them the gates of hell, the gates of devils, whatever you want to call it. Outside those gates, so I slept out for 4 nights across there, and so that's why I was already at that end where the speeches were going to be made. Now, what I saw was a rehearsal of Antifa being allowed. Yeah, it was a rehearsal because I was that end, so I saw it with my own eyes, and I wish I'd have had my phone on. But I managed to get my phone on just as they run down the side street where all the police were. And imagine to say, I've got on my phone, I've just seen a rehearsal of Antifa. The police have allowed this end, and watch the mainstream media news tomorrow and see what it says, because it's going to say this demonstration, and it's going to say they were this demonstration, and lie about it. And that's exactly what did happen the next day, you know. And they allowed Antifa that end. Antifa come back round and did it again once the march of all these injustices, women and children and families there, got to the top of Trafalgar Square. And like I say, for the people who are asleep, you know, some of the stuff we're saying, they're just not going to understand it, because the mainstream media, the establishment, have done a fantastic job for many, many years lying to them. You know, some of our histories are lied to us in the school and everything else. You know, how many Irish children were slaves? But you don't hear about that, do you? But there was thousands.
Yeah, absolutely. You went to Montserrat.
Absolutely. But you don't read that in the papers. They don't teach you that history in the schools, you know, and it's something that everyone has the right to know, and they don't do that.
Slavery is still going on in Arab countries with black people. They're still doing it to this day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And they're not owning up to it. All they want to do is keep that divide by making each group, whatever group you want to call us or put us in, look bad to the opposite group. They want to keep us fighting each other so no one is noticing what the establishment are doing right in front of our eyes.
Absolutely. It's insane. Antifa, though, I think a lot of them are funded by Soros. I mean, they scream. I've watched them in other countries. It's exactly the same stand. They scream the same thing. Nazis off our streets, fascists off our streets. They scream this, and they all have loudspeakers. They're all very well organised. It's unbelievable.
Why? Do you know why? Do you know, like, you've got this, I didn't know there was left and right and all that and far right and all this thing. You know, I didn't understand it when I was coming out on the streets and I was going to demonstrations, and the demonstration I was in was being classed as far right, and I couldn't understand that because there was nothing said at these demonstrations that was remotely what the mainstream media was saying it was. And then, as I said, I had to research everything. But if we look at the left, The reason why the left can get so many people together and when they go out and demonstrate on the streets is because they don't care what any of them are doing outside their demonstration. Where the right, if you call them the right, which is the decent side, and the kind, empathetic side, they seem to care about what someone else is doing, and then they create divides amongst their own divisions. Which doesn't help. I don't know if that happens in Ireland, but this is what is happening over here in the UK. Whereas if every group that was on the right side stood together, then this establishment would have something to worry about. Because at the moment, the establishment do not fear the people, and we need to make the establishment fear the people to be able to put this country right again and safer again.
Strange in this country, it's majority of them are leftists. They have been indoctrinated, and there's a few people waking up, mainly, from the older generation are obviously awake. My generation, which would be kind of the millennials, are majority. I would be unusual. They're all leftist. Majority of people I know are leftists. Even people slightly older than me are leftists. So, but I never even knew what that meant. It's only being in the stream or far right, because really that was used to be called conservative, which everybody used to be. But our government is completely extremely far left. All our media is extremely far left. Our government wasn't even voted in, but that's a long story. But I looked up left and right. It's to do with British Parliament. So when they're shouting all this, that majority of them don't even know. It's to do with where they sat in British Parliament. Literally, where one of them sat on the left and the other one sat on the right, and that's where they get far right, far left. I'm like, that's even nothing to do with anything. It's to do with, and the far left are really the Nazis, because Hitler was a national socialist, which is what the far left really are, which is what the Irish government is, and what Soros and all of them are. They were national socialists, which is what the far left is Nazis. Although they scream that at the so-called far right, which is conservatives, really. It's insane.
Because they say the opposite, don't they? I was at a demonstration which was for veterans, and we're walking down the street, and you've got Stand Up to Racism down there counter-protesting veterans and calling them Nazis. Yeah. Well, they thought
it makes sense because they're twisting everything, twisting all our words and using them against us. But it's really, Hitler was a socialist. That was his party was called National Socialist. And when you say it back to them, a lot of them are stupid and don't know, but some of them do know and are clever enough and trying to twist all the words around. So everything is being twisted around, like racism. What they are is racism, because they're screaming at you for wanting to protect your race.
What they don't realise is that everyone that they're calling right or far right are actually on the streets trying to stand up for them and their children. And you're right. Everything that they call the people on the right, they are actually on those words. They are the Nazis. They are the racists. I've seen it with my own eyes. Now, I'll give you an example. A few weeks back, I was at a Brexit demonstration outside 10 Downing Street. And when we arrived there, you had Stand Up to Racism doing their own demonstration. So we were standing there and we was listening to the speakers to see what they were saying to these people. And you can't blame the people because they believe what they're saying. They've been indoctrinated. You can't blame them. Somehow we have to try and wake them up from that indoctrination. And I've tried to have a debate and a normal discussion, and it's very difficult because all they do is scream in your face. They don't even have an answer. They just scream. Yeah. Now, I was at this demonstration with quite a few people, and they had this stage right outside 10 Downing Street, and they had speakers on there. You've got people like Diane Abbott, Jeremy Corbyn, all funding and who are staying with this group. And they was actually saying to these people who were listening that the people on the right or the far right, and now I know what it means, so thank you for that, because I didn't know what it meant, so that's interesting, have been bombing over 100 mosques in London. And they are allowed to stand outside 10 Downing Street and lie like
Jeez.
something like that. That's a massive lie. Telling
Yes.
these people that the people on the right have bombed over 100 mosques in London. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. In fact, I had to walk off because I couldn't bear to listen to the utter lies that they were telling.
Wow.
I was feeling sorry for the people listening because I was thinking, I cannot believe that you actually believe this, but they actually believe it.
Jesus. But I mean, it's you can kind of see it because even when you watch British news, like the odd time I've watched it, like, and believe me, ours is more propaganda. But what shocked me was, instead of talking about all the terrorisms and everything that's happening, they go, the biggest threat now is the far right. I'm like, when's the far right done anything? I don't remember any bombings. You've had countless bombings. You've had your kids blown up. You've had massive amount of gang rape. And yet you're talking about the far right. What have they done? Like, they've said some nasty words that happen to be the truth. Like, how could that be worse than bombing and killing your kids? Like, and even after that bomb, that horrific bomb where they blew up those kids with nails, it was in Manchester, of the American singer. And they literally went on the English police and said we were going to go and protect the mosques after it. It was like, what? You've just blown up your kids and you want to go and protect the mosque? It was the Muslims who killed the kids. It's insane. Like, absolutely. Do you think that there, in any way, there's anything good that they're trying to do? Do you think that they know that they just can't handle this and they're trying to protect, or do you just think that they want it to continue because they want to because before I was innocent and I used to kind of think, well, maybe, that they're trying to protect people or whatever. But now I'm completely on the mindset they actually don't care about us. They want us gone. They want to depopulate Ireland of the Irish. I'm pretty sure of it. But do you have any hope for the UK that maybe, I don't know, that they're trying to make you feel it's all okay so you don't all get into panic mode or something?
No, I believe they know what they're doing. I believe they actually quite like creating chaos between us all and us running around like headless chickens, especially the people who are awake. They don't, any truth teller that is spoken out in this country against the establishment is in prison. We have a lady called Melanie Shaw who spoke out against the establishment. She is in prison. We have Carol Woods, ex-social worker, who spoke out, is in prison. We have David Noakes, who recently was in prison because he said he had been curing cancer. There is a lot going on that people don't even know of, which is
I
shocking.
knew that Jada Francis has been kind of, they kind of keep putting her in for ridiculous reasons. Like, there's nothing, and her husband, Paul Golding.
Yeah, well, she's just been arrested again. She'd got on a plane. She was on the way to see her godchildren, to spend, I think it was Christmas, she said, with them. For them to go on a plane, get her off, and she's done nothing wrong. All they want to do is they want to try and beat every will out of you because they know you're not going to stop. I'm actually surprised because I'm quite prominent out there in my speaking. And I speak out on a lot of things that I know to try and wake people up. And I only speak on the truth. All we want is truth, honesty, and justice that should be natural. And it isn't natural because they're not serving justice. And it is on purpose. They know damn well what is going on in the country. They know damn well we have a sign of war on the streets. I'm in this system. The whole establishment cover for each other. Every department covers from each other. And they all play the same game. I had a meeting. I was in a meeting with Sadiq Khan and a borough commander with the other families and a couple of PAs, their PAs. And we went through all the paperwork that we wanted. Now, it was a list. We said the only thing we don't want is pictures of our children at the scene. We don't need to see that. We ID'd them We ID'd them after being hit at 71 miles an hour. And I wouldn't wish that on anyone because, you know, that imprint stays with you. And so we went through this list. Now, we was promised our paperwork 6 weeks later. They gave a deadline of 6 weeks. It got to the 7th week and we'd heard nothing. Not an email, not one phone call. So one of the other parents emailed the borough commander and said, right, we're in our 7th week, we've heard nothing, you haven't turned up with our paperwork. He emailed back, having the audacity to say he misunderstood the meeting and didn't realise we was asking for our paperwork. A complete fabrication. And that is how they all play it. Now, my MP is Nick Hurd. He's the Minister for Policing. He does the same thing. Two of the other parents, their MP is Boris Johnson. He does the same thing. The same thing.
Really? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Because I thought he was quite, you know, he would have been quite good, Boris Johnson, but no, he does the same thing. That's shocking.
It's all for everything they do. They don't care about the people, the working class. Let's say the working class.
Yeah.
They don't care about the working class. So they do whatever they want to us, and they all play the same game, and it's all for their own political careers. In the 1980s, Jeremy Corbyn knew that there was child brothels and abused children in Islington, where he was the MP. There's an open letter from John Mann regarding this as well. You can find that open letter. And he did not say a thing. Because
there were Muslims?
I don't
were running the child.
Yeah, I have no clue who, you know, was in control.
I don't think they have any problem speaking out on you know, if they're native people or, you know, Irish or whatever, but if there happen to be Muslims, they will not speak out about them. And I think that's, whatever reason, in the UK they've been doing that, and that's why they've got away with it, because, you know, they're all afraid of being called racist or whatever. So that's why they would have got away with it. It's insane. I mean, something like this happened in Ireland, where this political party wanted to launch called Identity Ireland. Sinn Féin literally got their thugs and attacked the guy, so that he didn't even get to speak. They all got, like, attacked on their way in, and there was Polish people who were standing up because they've come to Ireland and they've made their lives here, and they were standing up for Ireland and saying, you know, we don't want Islam here. We set up here. We have our lives here. We want to bring up our children in safety. La da 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 da. They all got chased down the streets by so-called Antifa, and they were like screaming at them, "You're not even from here. Fascists off our streets," and violently attacked them. It was insane. There was helicopters. It was like a war zone. Helicopters. Sinn Féin took over the speech going, they have a right to be here, the Muslims are good, and all this sort of stuff. It was absolutely crazy. And the media, even though the so-called right were all attacked, violently attacked in the Polish attack, they went on about how the fascists were terrible, when it was nothing to do with that. It was Antifa who destroyed Dublin.
Well, Antifa, they're controlled, aren't they? They're paid by George Soros. You know, it's all controlled, paid opposition to make what you're saying wrong, to control you. You know,
Yeah.
and not the rest of the public that are asleep really know what's going on. And that's what it's all about. And that's all they ever do. You know, and like I said, Antifa is definitely paid. You know, that's what they get. They get paid for doing this. The Remainers over here, the Remainers that have been standing outside Parliament, one particular who wears a hat has been standing outside Parliament for 2 years. His car is parked opposite Parliament. Now, you can't have cars parked opposite Parliament because it's classed as a threat. Yet his car is allowed there because he is paid to do that. Where people don't realise, who are asleep, that he is paid to do that. They just think this is just some man, you know, has dedicated his time to say to the UK Parliament to remain in the EU. No, it's not. it's someone who's paid. Like the rest of them, we've been up there day after day. We've seen money exchange hands. We've seen loads of food bought for them. We've seen their cab fares paid home. It's all paid, controlled opposition.
Yeah, no, I heard the same. After that big thing in Dublin happened, after this party tried to launch, somebody said to me, where do you think that they got the money to come down? Because a lot of them were Northern Irish. But came down in buses, all of it paid from all over the country to come there. Who do you think paid for it? Sinn Féin paid for it. They got the money from Soros, and they paid for the whole destroying of Dublin, the madness of it, and attacking Polish and people who wanted to speak. They literally would not allow free speech. It was absolutely shocking and disgraceful. And Sinn Féin have because they used to be a national party, they used to be known as a national party, they're now a socialist party, and they're exactly the same as the rest in our government, which are also disgusting, horrific parties. Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, they're all the same. They're absolutely useless. Worse than useless, they're all treason. They all should be lined up and shot, because it's completely against everything our forefathers died for. Absolutely, it's horrible.
Well, that's exactly what I say. Our forefathers fought for freedom, but it wasn't given us for free, was it? Because, we lost so many soldiers. I lost my own grandfather, and this is not what they fought for. They didn't fight for us to now have to fight ourselves just to be in our own country. And this, it's against our own establishment. And it should be natural for any establishment to want to protect the people. And it's not natural in our establishment, in our country, and like you quite rightly said, in many countries. Just to say again, regarding this, what they do is, I was at another demonstration, and it was for PTSD, which is where we've had 69 soldiers so far this year commit suicide, veterans. Because of PTSD, because they don't get the help they need from the MOD and the establishment when they leave the army. 69 of our veterans. Now, I was at a demonstration. That particular day, the demonstration was up the side street, because on the main street outside Whitehall, there was another demonstration hosted by Sadiq Khan with Remainers. Now, what I don't understand about the Remainers is how they don't really see what is going on, because what they had them do, they had them walk down Whitehall, then walk back round in a circle. So for the mainstream media to keep filming this, to make it look like they had over 700,000 Remainers on the street, when they didn't. All they was doing was walking around in a circle. And I just, for the life of me, cannot understand how the people there did not realise that's what they was doing and what they was doing that for.
I suppose they don't care. It's like a lot of them, I think they've invested in this idea so much so that they just want it, and they don't care what they're doing to the country. And some of them just been paid. I don't know. It's insane. The whole thing is just so corrupt. It is like being in the Twilight Zone. Never realised that you have to fight your government for normal things that you shouldn't have to fight. Like, this is just crazy. And the amount of lies being told every day, like the main media absolutely annoys me now, because it's just lies after lies. Even for Brexit, we got told, it would never happen, that it would just never happen. So they didn't prepare for it. They didn't organise it. They didn't think anything, even though our biggest trading partner, our second biggest trading partner, is yourselves. So they didn't prepare. I think the biggest trading is America, which is not even in the EU. But anyway, they didn't organise it, didn't think anything. Oh, it'll never happen, never happen. It was almost seen as a joke. They didn't prepare. So then when it did happen, they were like, almost like, really pushing on this anti-British kind of thing, oh, the British are racist, the British are this, British are that. Oh, it was just the racist British, and the only one, they were lied to, they were fooled, they didn't know what they were voting for, even though we had voted for, the last one was 2009, nearly 20 years ago, that we were told, that, they're just racist or whatever. They've just done a complete job on this country, that they don't know that people were actually what voted for was freedom. And it's a disgrace. It's just absolutely a disgrace. And since then, they still haven't dealt with it. Instead of kind of going, okay, we need to trade with the British, the most sensible thing is to go to the British and stop hiding behind the EU, waving your flags. Go EU, you go and threaten the British and use the border as an excuse to keep them in, which was bullshit excuse, because there was Northern Ireland and Ireland have been separated since 1922. There was never a border until 1969. The reason why the border in 1969 came about was to do with the bombing campaign. It was never to do with a passport. You never had to go to Northern Ireland and show your passport or anything like that. It was complete fabricated bullshit government to try and put the pressure on the British into staying through the EU. Instead of kind of going, okay, look, we need to trade with the British, we should actually really leave with the British, because A, the Irish voted twice out, B, we only went into the EU with the British to trade with them. So we shouldn't really be staying in, because there's nobody else in the EU we trade with. So, but it's insane. It's just completely corrupt government that doesn't care about our trade or anything else. That'll go and just is insisting on trying to break the British into staying into the EU. For the EU, not for themselves even, or for ourselves. It's for the EU, because our government is complete EU puppets, and that's all they are.
Absolutely. You know, the only thing you keep hearing from the Remainers of what they think of the Brexiteers, the people who want to leave, is exactly what you just said. Either they're a racist because they think that everyone who voted leave, that's 17.4 million of them here, voted leave just because they don't want, they want to close the borders and they don't want immigrants allowed in the country. That's the intelligence of the Remainers thinking that that's the only reason the Leavers voted. And then you have the Remainers who don't want the EU because they think that there'd be no trade and no freedom of movement. Well, when they're talking about freedom of movement, they're talking about that you'll have to pay £11 for a 2-year passport. Of course, you know, do they not sit back and think, well, hang on a minute, before we was in the EU, you could travel anywhere, you know, and plenty of countries to trade.
You know, it's funny, I've had a conversation with some of the British, and they're like, well, you know, we won't be able to leave, we won't be able to. I'm like, don't be ridiculous. Haven't you, like, didn't your grandparents leave before the EU? I'm sure they did. And what's the worst? They'll make you do a visa. What? I've done visas to America loads of times. It takes you 2 seconds. It's no big deal. I'm sure you can write and read. Like, it's not a difficult thing. You know, where's your address? What's your name? How long will you stay there? It's not a difficult issue. Like,
there's a thing that you know that's come about now, and it's the biggest UK fraud in history. It is absolutely massive, and I don't know if you've heard of it, so I'll say it for anyone who listens to this show, so they can research it themselves. And it is 788790 Finchley Road, Gordon, Bowden. You know, every listener that listens to this show, this is something you can research yourself, and you can then see what is happening to the public purse. And you can then see that there's no pensions. There's not going to be no pensions in that pot for the police. It's the biggest UK fraud ever going. 788790 Finchley Road, Gordon, Bowden. Research it on YouTube, research it on the internet.
what is it? The police don't get any pensions.
Yeah, what it is, they've stolen all the money from the Treasury. So basically what it is, you've got, and all the evidence is there. So the evidence is there for anyone to research this themselves. There has been over 200 odd thousand companies registered at this address, and this address is a boiler room. And you're talking all the MPs, you're talking Theresa May, you're talking Amber Rudd, you're talking celebrities, you're talking a lot of people, and people can research this themselves.
Wow.
And it all ties in with things like what you're saying about the bank, you know, may crash. You know, what they want you to do in the end is put all your money in the bank, and I'm becoming quite fearful of wanting to put anything in the bank so they can then just switch it and take it all, because look and research and see for yourself. It's a massive story. And people who are, every time I'm out on the street and I go past a police constable, I say to them, please look this up when you go home.
Oh, that's pretty shocking.
Yeah, when we end this, you can have a look yourself and you'll see what I'm saying. It's the
Yes.
biggest UK fraud. Tony Blair, everyone is involved. They're stealing everything from us. They have all offshore accounts. None of them are paying tax. They're sucking and bleeding us dry. Please research. Even if you've never believed anything before of anything that, we're trying to wake you up on, please research what I just said.
Absolutely. I don't know, in the UK, are they trying to get rid of cash? Because in Ireland, they're trying to get rid of cash in banks. They're trying to have, even shops with no cash. They want to disappear cash, so they're completely in control of you. Because once they have a credit card, they know exactly where you are, when you're at it, how much you're spending. So they literally can make judgments on whether you can have a loan or not, but more so that they can track you at all time, where cash leaves no trail. So they're literally you'll see in banks in Ireland that they'll have no cash desks. So they have banks with no cash in it, which is insane. They want to force everybody to use their cards to control them.
Oh, absolutely. And also to use your cash, isn't it? To
Oh,
use
yeah.
your cash while it's in there as well, which is another biggest thing. And I'll give you, I said earlier, and this is something else that, your listeners can, so I'm not saying anything they can't research themselves, but earlier on I said to you, problem, reaction, solution. If you type in, and this is going to be shocking for you because it was shocking for me, but this is part of why I think they will end up with people going cashless. If you type in Sainsbury's stabbings 2018, then type in Tesco's stabbings 2018. You can type this in Google and you'll see how many stabbings there've been in different Sainsbury's in 2018, and the same for Tesco's, the same for Asda. Now, there was one quite recently in Lidl's, so maybe they're going to start it with Lidl's. Now, if everyone looked at those stories, what will happen? They will start thinking, oh my God, I'm not going to go to the supermarket again, so I'll have to start shopping online. Now, everything's a problem, reaction, solution. They start putting it in your face so that they can get to the solution, which is to go cardless. You research that yourself, and then you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Scare you, scaremonger, the same thing they're doing with the Remainers. They scaremonger you. Oh my goodness, I'm not going to a supermarket. Research, you'll be very, very shocked by what you come across.
Yeah, definitely I can see it happening. They want those little chips. I think they're bringing them in one European country. It's like put a chip into your right hand, and literally that's how you pay for everything. You open doors. It is slaves. They want us to enslave us completely.
There are
Control
people,
every
yeah,
aspect of our life.
there are people out there that actually do want to be controlled. Now, why would you want that? Why would you want to be controlled and not have the freedom of choice? The freedom of speech, the freedom to be free. And like I say, everything is pointing to a dictatorship. Everything that is
Absolutely.
going on is exactly what you said. I've just told you some more that you're maybe not aware of, like the
Yes.
Twilight Zone, because it is hard when you wake up and realise what you lived in is not what you live in.
No.
You will be
I mean, I really do believe since the EU, it's been just as slowly. The EEC wasn't so bad or wasn't as noticeable, but it's been a huge increase since the EU. This is literally Hitler won the war. Everything Hitler stands for. The last time they did it with tanks, this time they've done it with banks. So any country like Ireland, Spain and Greece paid a huge price. They crashed us all to try and control us. And that is literally because Ireland voted out no. I think Greece did as well. So country that tried to stand up to them, they crashed them. And that is why you're having a difficult, because it was harder to crash and control you because A, your population, B, you financially were quite secure and you didn't take on the money. You did some sensible clever moves to keep you safe, but because your government is treason like ours, that's why it's got you into trouble.
To think that we live in one of the richest countries in the world, because believe me, they have got money. You know, they say we owe this huge deficit, but they've never told us who we owe it to. You know,
Mm.
break it down, tell us, have it transparent, you know, to be in the richest country and to see the poverty and people starving on our streets. You know, we have massive, you know, all different issues in this country, all different threats. But if you want to know who the snake's head is, it's the establishment.
Absolutely. And we're the same. We are being flooded with third world immigrants. And Irish people are being evicted from their home. We've 10,000 homeless Irish. Like, our population was only 4 million. 10,000. There's 4,000 of them are children who are homeless, where we're being taking in so many third world countries problems and we're being flooded in. They weren't even given a choice. They're taking over hotels and putting in, like, mainly Muslim men into these hotels in the middle of nowhere in Ireland. It's absolutely shocking, and the Irish people have no choice. Even one town, which was people at 95% of the people said no, they didn't want it. The government still went in and put in refugees, even when the people said no, that's not what they want. They don't care what we think. They don't care about our voice. They're going to do it anyway. And whether we like it or not, and if we don't like it, they'll jail it. Or they basically say, leave the country or get jailed, but you're not allowed to speak about it. And that this new UN pact is all about that. They're going to flood everybody. Never going to be illegal immigration anymore. Anyone can come into your country from anywhere, no matter what they've done in their past, whether they've been mass murderers, mass rapers, committed genocide, it doesn't matter. They can come in, but you will be criminalised if you speak badly of it, or if you're talking negatively of it. You will then become the criminal, and eventually you will be picking your children. Unfortunately, this has happened to you. God rest your child. But picking your children up out of ditches, which is going to happen to all of us, and anybody who criticises it will be criminalised. You will have to be employing and prove to be employing a certain amount of non-nationals. So you'll have to be able to prove that you're hiring a certain amount of Muslims, a certain amount of Africans, a certain amount of LGBT community. And if you don't, they will come and shut down your premises. You will have to, no matter if they're spitting on women, which a lot of these third world countries have no value on women's lives and don't feel that they should be working, even if they're spitting on women and raping them, you will still have to hire these people. If you own your own companies, you'll have to have a certain quota of a certain amount of people you will have to hire that is non-nationals. Otherwise, they will close you down. If you're in workspace and you are being, raped or whatever, you will either have to leave, but if you talk badly about it, you'll be criminalised. This is where we are heading, and it's very, very scary times.
Well, I think, I've seen a lot of videos, and the issue I have is that these are not families coming into the country. These are men coming into the country.
Absolutely.
Now, why would they just be all men? I saw a video, and it was an undercover video the other day of a lady in another country who was assisting the people coming into here, men. Yeah, and she was telling them how to act, what to say, training them. And what I fear is that amongst these people there are extremists. And that is why I'm saying that there is a silent war on our streets, and people don't realise that they need to wake up quick, because we don't have that much longer. 2020, maybe, and the only way now is to stick the yellow vest on, stand together, find some common ground, because it really is a fight for our children. I've been put in this system. I didn't know all of this. I'm a level 5 in leadership and management, and I'm a level 3 trainer in safeguarding of people. That's what I'm trained in, and that's what I train people to do. And I never knew the shocking things that were going on in this country, and yet I was training people to safeguard people, and it's shocking that that's not given to us. The same thing wasn't given to our children. From the moment this happened, we've had nothing but disrespect, doors shut in our faces, brick walls, cover up. Do you know that night? That night we was at the scene. We was at the scene, all us families, and we was told at the Premier Inn that was on the same road that there was 3 fatalities. They didn't check who we were. We was in a packed room. It looked like the restaurant. There was people working behind the bar. It was said to us as just a matter-of-fact way. And do you know they never even offered us a lift home?
Jesus.
We had to drive home and try and get home safely
Amazing.
because they literally do not care.
It's as if they're angry with you because it happened to you. I really...
That is it. That's how they treat you. Like I said yesterday, we was getting what about the impact on him and his family? Are you for real? The whole court was erupting anyway. But are you for real? You've covered this up all along. You have.
They know what they're doing. This is an army. This isn't any chance that these men are coming in, or young men of a fighting age. This is an army, and they are here to kill us. I have absolutely no doubt that the government know exactly, all governments in Europe know exactly what they're doing. They're depopulating us. They know that these guys are coming to kill us. And they come with absolutely hate towards Christianity and hate for Western ways. The government knows that. There is no, if they really cared about people, why wouldn't they take the Christians in that were being killed by Islamics? No, they didn't. Even the Pope, and I do believe he's a fake Pope as well, he told us to take in Muslims, not the Christians who've been killed by Muslims. Or what about the white South Africans? There was no plea to take them in. Or any other countries that isn't. What they did take in was Islamic males who are very violent and very angry. They're here to kill us. That is an army. And they've brought in an army to depopulate us. They know exactly what they're doing.
Absolutely, they do. And like I said a little while ago, the only way is to stand up. Stand up for the children, because otherwise nothing will change. When you go out on the demonstrations, and we only went out since March this year on a demonstration, and you see that the demonstrations, as fantastic as they've been, and people put a lot of effort in them, so I'm not knocking them, but they don't have any effect. I've done demonstrations outside Scotland Yard. When you're on them, you speak to many, many people, good, decent people, and you find out that some of these have been demonstrating since the 1980s. Now, if that don't tell you that it hasn't got anywhere, you need to and then with France rising up, Canada rising up, and watching all of that, it's the only way. You now have some police in France standing with the people. You have the firefighters standing with the people, and the other day they was protecting them from the police. In the end, the police will stand, every one of them, with the people once they see.
Yeah. I do think war is coming, and it is coming very soon to all of us. I can see, I can actually see Ireland going into war. I can see most of Europe heading that way. I think it's quite a frightening time. I do think, and it's just quite crazy because, Ireland has only left this situation since the late 90s to end up back into this bloody situation again. But this time it's our own government. It's insane that this is where we've ended up so quickly because of the bloody EU and our government.
And like you say, it's happening in all countries, isn't it? Not just,
Yeah.
here, not just in Ireland, Canada, Sweden.
Not even just, in Europe, all over the world, which is quite crazy. It's a whole global thing. Every country is having it.
Because it's the political class, isn't it? And the globalists that we're fighting against. That's what it is.
Yeah.
You know, the new world order, the one world order. You know, you look at President Trump. You know, we was up London. There was only started 8 of us. Then there was, I mean, I don't know what your feelings are. And then there was 20 of us that was demonstrating against thousands of people on the streets because the mayor of London was allowed to have a big blow up baby of President Trump. Now that's the president of America, and
Yeah,
you know, to me, it was making us look silly to the rest of the world that there's people
absolutely.
demonstrating here with a big blown up dummy. So there was about 8 of us who started on this side, and we ended up with about 20 who was saying, you know, we're not having that. At the end of the day, he's an ally, you know, and why don't you like him? Is it because he's someone who loves his country and loves the people and wants to get rid of the cabal, you know, and everything else? Don't people want someone in power who actually cares about the people? You know, no matter what colour you are, if you're British, and so on and so on. And if you're Swedish and you live in Sweden, you know, don't people want someone in power that's going to care about them and make sure they're safe instead of just making sure they're safe first and don't give a damn about people as a whole?
I think they're so brainwashed. I actually think it's disgraceful. Like particularly in Ireland, how they've treated President Trump, and that's from our government, and that's from our media. Even our government have been absolutely disgusting and disgraceful, the things that they've said about him. Considering he's a world leader and Ireland is like a little pimple that he could easily step on. And it's absolutely, I think it's disgraceful. I think our government should have apologised for speaking out about President of America like the way they have. Absolutely disgraceful, disgusting. I think I prefer Ireland to become a state of America. They could make us an army base to attack the EU army, since the EU army was threatening him as well, which was, well, the French was threatening that they get an EU army to attack America, which is absolutely disgraceful. There wouldn't be a France if it wasn't for America. They saved their arse twice in the World War because of Germany.
Absolutely, but the EU army, you know, has come about because they know your own army will not go against the civilians if they rise up. And that's
Yeah.
why they've got the EU army to bring in. I think they're going to be a full EU army by 2025. And this is what I say, you know, all our countries, we're in dark days and we need to
Yeah.
stand up to
You
just
see,
get,
they've been sent into France already. The EU army was sent in to stop the French yellow vests.
yeah, yeah. And look how they've treated them. You know, they're firing pellets at them. It's disgusting what they're doing. You know, and it just wouldn't happen with your own army because they wouldn't go against the civilians. And now is the time because it's not going to get any better. It's only going to get worse. You know,
Absolutely. If we
you,
lay down anyway or give an inch, they will take 3 miles until we're dead. Because it's not even about winning. They want us dead. So we need to fight for our lives. We need to get all of them out.
it, it is a fight for survival now. That's
Yeah,
exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. You know, and the black communities are suffering just the same. They're not speaking about the
absolutely.
mainstream media, but if you look over here, since January this year, you look at the amount of people who've been stabbed and shot, and look at who they are. You know, this demonstration that's been going for 20 years every year is about all the deaths in police custody. You know, because how many has there been? There's been a lot more than people realise of how many children, youngsters have been dying in police custody. And everyone who fights out, you know, they try and blacken your name, and all you're doing is trying to fight out just for justice of your child, your son, your brother. You know, like I said earlier, justice should become natural, and it isn't no more. But what I will say is good will prevail over evil. Good will win. We all stand together.
Yeah, and we need to all just stand together, and that's the thing. I do think, hopefully, it'll bring us all, England and Ireland, because we've had our, bad blood and our bad kind of whatever that's gone on. But really, we've been together for this amount. We've had such a long history together that I think that hopefully, that it'll strengthen both our countries to actually start seeing that it's our governments that are playing off, particularly when it comes to Northern Ireland, and they're playing it off because a lot of, the information you were not given, a lot of information we weren't given, and a lot of information was incorrect about Northern Ireland, and the same with Northern Irish. We're given incorrect about the South, and they just played everybody, but it's the government's playing people like little toys.
Absolutely, that's all we are, isn't it? It's almost like a monopoly board. They're sitting up there, the elite. Oh, let's do this to them. Let's divide that there. Let's spread these rumours out about them. Make them look bad. Then that lot will go against them. That's what it's all about. They've divided us for too long now, and it's about time people open their eyes to the real facts of what is going on. Wake up to it, because although we're divided as nations, as countries, we're not divided in our pain and suffering, and we don't want another Josh, Harry and George. We don't want that. We're out here fighting for Josh, Harry and George for justice, for the rest of the children of the country, because we know what's going on, and for the country. A patriot. A patriot is not what the mainstream media and the establishment portrayed them as. A patriot means someone who is going to stand up against the corrupt establishment and stand up for the people of the country. That is what a patriot is. That's the real terminology. And they hate patriots, don't they? Because they know we speak the truth and they don't want anyone listening to us.
And they don't like nationalists. They've changed all these words to make them sound negative, where everybody should be nationalists and everybody should be proud of who they are and what their country is. And they should be easily able to, this is my country, and they should be proud of that, but they don't want it. They want one world, one gender, one religion, and easy, like, enslaved people to control. And that's what they're really aiming for. And it's a disgraceful. The EU is destruction of Europe. The UN is destruction of the world. And it's a disgrace that we've all been pawns to their little game. But Tracy, it's been amazing to talk to you, and thank you so much. You're so brave, a fantastic warrior. You are really inspiring lady, amazing. And I believe your son is looking down on you, and he is so proud of you and the fight that you've taken on for him. Absolutely an inspiring warrior, and you will go down in history. Fantastic. When the story gets out, and it will come out one day, about what you had to do to get justice for your son, you will go down as a warrior in history to be remembered. Well done. And I'm just totally inspired by you and your strength. You're an amazing lady. Thank you so much. And thank you for coming and telling us your story. A very difficult story.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for letting me be on here and speak out and tell the story. I need to thank you as well. And hello to everyone in Ireland. Thank you for listening.
And thank you for telling. And again, when you come up, I will keep in contact with your story, Tracy. And if there's any big progress in either way, let us know and we'll put you on again. And, because this is the main important thing, that you get your voice out and people get to hear, not what the media is going to brainwash them as as people our media is going to tell people that you are this and that and the other thing, and you're making up stories because you're anti-Islamic and all the other things that they want to and will try and say. But it's important you get your voice out and reach to people and say, no, I'm a normal mom. This was my child and he died. And the government is hiding it, and the police. It's just absolutely disgusting. It's bad enough what you've gone through without having to go through this. It's a disgrace. And you will go down as a hero and a warrior. And well done to you. And I do believe your son is looking down at you, and he's so proud of you. Anyway, God love you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we'll talk again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much on the Bon Marie Show.
You're welcome.
Hi everyone. Just to say we wasn't going to speak here today. because we have a march in 2 weeks' time, so I wanted to save that speech for them. But just to say thanks to Kevin and Glenn and Danny for getting us up here. So we're only up here for 3 minutes. So firstly, just what I want to say to the police officer that was going to arrest the woman because she was carrying a pig with Sadiq Khan's face on it, because she said it was offensive. Well, what about the thousands that were here yesterday showing our great country up against the President of America? What about them? Because Trump's welcome,
Khan's not.
Exactly. Why there's patriots, we shall have an England, we shall have a Northern Ireland, we shall have Scotland, and we shall have Wales. You ain't taking it from any of us. So what I'm going to say is I'm going to salute St George, I'm going to salute St Andrew, I'm going to salute St David, and I'm going to salute all our armed forces in the past and the present. But what I'm not going to salute is the British police, who have no law and order, who hide evidence, who look after the rapists, just like our appeasing establishment. To the police, I'm sorry, but you don't want to do this, do you? Because you don't want to be called a racist. Well, you're not racist, you're cowards. And your spineless behaviour offends me. Shame on you.
Shame on you.
Honour your own, because in 2 weeks' time, we're standing outside Scotland Yard and telling you exactly what we think.
Give Tracy a massive round of applause. Come on, she's the reason we're here as well. Do you know what? We've travelled the length and breadth of this country. We've been to Edinburgh, Glasgow, Newcastle, Sunderland, Leeds, Manchester, and we are never going to stop until we get justice for Josh, Harry and George. So like I said in every one of my speeches, we're here today to stand with each and every one of you to tell the police over there, to tell the corrupt establishment that enough is enough.
Enough is enough.
28.
You are listening to Irish News Radio and irishnews.net. Email news@irishnews.net.